Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it. David?
Hello.
You are here on a momentous night. As we begin the second decade of a modeler's life, we've made a huge decision. Can you guys still hear me?
We can hear you.
Right.
We're very excited.
I don't know.
We're waiting for this momentous. I'm at the edge of my seat. I feel the gravity. But I
I've
also
dropped my
feel
cheese balls.
Yes, David's cheese balls are all over the floor.
There you go. Well, don't let John Sacerdoti find out, or he'll be madder than heck.
The state of Massachusetts will come and shut David down.
Yeah, no more cheese balls in the aisles. Why are you serving cheese balls in the aisles? I thought it would be okay. No, you can't do that. Okay. And no more inflatable animals.
I need a bigger booth to serve my cheese balls.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and Kelly was putting them in cups, and I kept saying to Kelly, stop putting them in cups. And he's like, and then John says, the cups were okay. That was a good idea. So now I got to say to Kelly, oh, good idea, Kelly. All right.
You could just skip that part.
Yeah,
I don't think we need to give Kelly too much confidence.
Hopefully he's not listening to this.
Well, he doesn't really listen to the podcast, does he?
Yeah, he's like the original super fan. He's there. I think he listened to it right from. I think he was listening to it before I hit the record button the first time. So, anyways, tonight is. I wish he was here because he's under the weather right now. He's still dealing with his Springfield, the Springfield crud. But
we really miss him.
We do miss him.
Yeah,
tremendously. Sure. For the first decade of a modeler's life, we concentrated on model railroading. And as you do, as many people do, when you're looking at model railroading videos on YouTube, other videos start cropping up. And one that cropped up for me a year and a half ago was called the RC, R as in Ricky, C as in Carl, Geek, like computer geek, RC Geek. And there's this guy making these really good videos about building RC planes. And I watched these videos. I watched several of the videos over the last year and a half, and I'm thinking, man, I'd love to talk to this guy. He's really, really interesting. And then one day he crashed one of his planes. And then I thought, man, I want to talk to this guy. He's really, really interesting. And man, he must have just been absolutely mortified when this happened. So then I decided that as we start the second decade of this podcast, we're going to talk to people from other hobbies. What do you think?
Excellent.
What do you think? You think that's a good idea, David?
I like the idea.
You kind of broke the ice, actually, because a few weeks ago we listened to your first interview, and you're a plastic plane modeler as well as a model railroader. So we talked a lot about that in your first interview. And so you kind of broke the ice about that. And, you know, there's all model railroad modelers are in general have a tendency to work in other things. I think some of them do. Model cars, model planes, blah, blah, blah. And so anyways, tonight we're going to talk to, his name is Chris Wolfe, and he seems like a lovely gentleman. And we're going to talk to him all about being an RC plane guy. And he has a very, very successful video channel. As I said, it's called the RC Geek. He has almost 60,000 subscribers. His videos are top quality. That's a big thing for me. Let's get him in here, and then we'll start talking about that. Derek, can you go down to the green room and get Chris to come into the studio?
I sure will. Hey, Chris.
Hey, guys.
Chris, come on in.
Hey, Chris.
Here I come.
Chris,
how are you doing tonight?
We're doing good. Chris,
doing good.
First, it's very exciting to talk to you. Do you get that sense? Do people when you you must would go to RC shows and what have you, and people walk up to you and go, "Oh, you're Chris. You're the RC Geek guy. I watch your videos all the time." You must get that a lot, do you?
Yeah. I mean, I've been in the RC hobby literally my entire life, and so I've known folks from when I was a kid. A lot of them got to see me grow up at some of these events that I go to because my dad was involved in the hobby. I grew up, so he had a hobby store called Jet Hangar Hobbies. He was a pioneer in RC jets way back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And so, some of that stems from just guys that have known me for literally since I was, a baby. And then, I do get, the recognition from the channel as well, quite a bit, especially at events and stuff. The funniest story I can tell you, though, so we were in, this was, I don't remember, a couple years ago. We were in Italy on vacation, and we're walking through, I think it was Florence, some square in Florence, just sightseeing. And then we get back to our place later that night, and I see this email in my inbox, and it says, "Hey, were you in such and such a place in Florence this afternoon about 1:00?" I was like, "Yeah, I was. Were you there?" And so somebody who was there recognized me, emailed me. I was like, "Dude, you should have come up and said hi." He's like, "Oh, I was part of a group," but it was just hilarious. And my family was like, "No way that happened. There's no way."
Wow.
So yeah, it was just kind of funny.
So your dad had a hobby shop. Whereabouts was that?
Yeah, it was in Southern California. So he had a couple locations that he moved in and out of, but the biggest one was in Hawaiian Gardens, which is in the LA area. It's right. I think it's LA County, right on the border of, or near the border of Orange County.
So you probably worked in the store as a kid then, did you?
I did. I grew up building plastic models. I love plastic modeling. I still do. I don't build as many of those as I would like, because I'm usually building the RC stuff. But I grew up just like my summers I would spend in the back of the shop, and I didn't fully appreciate it at the time when I was a kid, right? Because there's just like, I got to go to the shop again. It's so boring. But I'd go there and I'd build plastic models, and I'd watch the guys, working with my dad, and they were just doing incredible scale modeling and innovation, and I just didn't fully appreciate it until, I got older, and it's just, typically the case. And so truthfully, some of the best memories I have growing up are in the back of my dad's shop, just being there and watching, everything that was going on. My dad, he did some movie work too, which was pretty fun. And so, yeah.
What, any movies that we might recognize that he worked on?
There might be a couple. So he built the models for Top Gun.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. He was contracted by the special effects company to build the static models for that. And so he created fiberglass tooling. And so it was a 1/10 scale F-14 Tomcat and a 1/7 scale F-5E Tiger II that he molded specifically for the movies, for that movie. He also worked on Iron Eagle 1, Iron Eagle 2. He worked on Firefox. That was the first one that he was involved with. And he did some TV show stuff too. But it was, all of it was just, these movie companies just needing somebody to build models for them. In the case of Iron Eagle 2, he actually flew the models and they blew them up while they were flying, which was pretty wild.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. So Iron Eagle is a 1986 action film directed by Sidney Furie. The film is similarly themed towards Top Gun, followed by 3 sequels: Iron Eagle 2, Ace's Iron Eagle 3. Wow. Doug Masters, son of veteran U.S. Air Force pilot Colonel Ted Masters, is a hotshot civilian pilot, blah, blah, blah. Wow. And starring Lou Gossett Jr. and a bunch of others. Wow. How cool is that? So you probably did you go on the set?
No. The only time I was pretty young at that point. The only time I got to go on set with him was for there was a Weird Science cable TV show, and they needed some airplanes for some subplots for this particular episode. So I got to spend a day on Universal Studios set while they were filming scenes with my dad, but that was the only time I got to do that. But if you've never seen, so have you guys not seen Iron Eagle?
I haven't seen it.
I've
No.
heard of it. I never got around to watching it.
So it's not a good movie, but it's also
Or you know what?
fantastic.
That works
Right?
out.
It's like,
That works out perfect because this is not a good podcast. So that's
yeah. Like, personally, I love the movie, but it's just like total 80s cheese. The story is hokey, but at the same time, just I don't know. I always enjoyed that movie a bit more than Top Gun personally because it's the pacing of it's a little bit faster.
So we are the Iron Eagle of Model Railroad podcast.
yeah. There you go.
There we go. There we go.
And apparently, this other movie, Top Gun, it was some guy named Tom Cruise was in it.
I think so. Yeah.
I've never heard of him.
No. So your dad built a couple of models, like in 1/10 scale for Top Gun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I was able to come across some pictures of them online through the years that I've saved onto my phone and other places, but there aren't a lot of pictures. And my dad didn't really have any pictures that he had really taken or saved of that stuff.
So how old would you have been when he was doing that?
Probably, let's see. I would have been under 10, so I probably would have been about 6 or 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were born around 1980 and the film came out around 1986 and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I was born in 78.
Okay. So yeah. So when it came out, you were 8 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. And you and your mom and your dad went to Grumman's Chinese Theater for the premiere. I'm assuming.
I think the invite might have gotten lost in the mail.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Walk the red carpet with Tom Cruise.
No, he wasn't. I don't even think he got a credit for it. But because what it was is the arrangement was he was contracted to build the movies for the special effects company, and then he didn't. I don't even think he painted them. I'm not sure. And he just provided them to the special effects company, and they did the rest of it. So.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's recap here, guys. This is the first time we've ever purposely gone out and searched somebody else out from who's specifically in a different hobby. And we're like 12 minutes in, and his dad built planes for Top Gun, scale planes for Top Gun.
I think that's right. We used to talk
It's all
about
downhill from here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is like, instead of 8 degrees of Todd Treaster, this is 8 degrees of Tom Cruise. I mean, really, who would have thought we'd be this close between the AML podcast and Top Gun Tom Cruise? That's
right.
That's
we're kind of batting 1,000 at this point.
Yeah.
We should probably end the podcast right here.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. After 10 years, we're done.
Yeah, this is the apex.
Yeah.
Don't forget to turn off the lights when you're leaving.
Right. We'll probably get rid of that shrimp in the studio. I can't imagine what it's like growing up as a kid with a dad who owns a hobby shop. I mean, what was that like? Did you just did you have your hands on everything? Did you dabble in everything in the hobby shop? What was that experience like, just being there in the shop around all that cool stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a lot of learning by osmosis. I just kind of was there observing. I built a lot of plastic models. I spent hours walking up the plastic model aisle, just learning all of the different airplanes. That was kind of my aircraft identification course, if you will. And so I've always loved aviation and airplanes. But that being said, I've dabbled in all aspects of the hobby, right? RC cars, RC boats. But my passion has always been airplanes. And so that's where I've always kind of stayed within. And the boats were fun for a time, and the cars are fun. I really enjoy building RC cars, but I kind of lose interest driving them just because it's not a real big challenge for me. And I also did like model rockets and that kind of stuff too.
What was your first RC airplane you flew? Do you remember?
It was a Breedy 4 Seasons 40 trainer. That's what I learned on, with an Enya 53 4-stroke glow engine on the front.
So you went all out. Was it? It was channel radio, right, back then, or the crystals and all that stuff.
Yeah, it was 72 megahertz.
Okay, yeah.
This was so, back in the 70s and early 80s, it was craft radios were the big ones. But by the time I started flying, my dad tried to get me to fly, for a while, but it wasn't until age 11 where it really kind of stuck. And so by that time, my dad was flying Airtronics. Excuse me. And so it was an Airtronics Vanguard radio, probably.
Okay.
And just a 4-channel trainer, but it had an asymmetric airfoil on it, and so it was fairly aerobatic for what it was. And so I flew that for quite a while to learn how to fly, and I learned from there. And then I received a Royal Aircraft Zero kit, scale kit. And if you know anything about Royal Aircraft, they are just a forest in a box. So it's just this box full of wood that you have to piece together and do a whole bunch of carving on to turn into an airplane. And so I started that project at the age of 16, and going through high school and all that stuff. I think and then I ended up finishing it at age 18. So
do you have any idea roughly how many planes you've built? Even close to, can you even make a guess at it?
I don't know. I mean, the hobby has changed so much since those days because everything is so prefabricated now. I've designed kits that my folks have sold and scratch built airplanes and built kits. But nowadays it's like, if you want to build something, you can probably find it already made somewhere in some form. But unless you want a specific size, then you're going to have to search for it or find plans or scratch build it yourself. But I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Okay, so how long ago was it that your dad closed the shop? Like, I'm assuming he probably closed it and retired. Is that what happened?
Well, they kept the business going even through last year. But,
oh, really?
Yeah. The storefront closed down in the mid 90s, and they ended up going just all mail order. And it's been, an online store since then. But yeah, recently my folks decided that it was probably about time based on the cost of the taxes versus the lack of sales nowadays, because not many folks want to actually build kits anymore, and so they just figured it was time. So
with all the bind and fly and plug and play stuff that's out, it's kind of the building a aircraft is sort of a lost art for a lot of people.
Yeah, 100%.
And okay, I didn't know that. But yet you seem to, everything you do, it seems to have some building and painting involved.
Yeah, I have a hard time not making things my own, right? Like, anybody can open a box and put together in 5 minutes a foam arf and go fly it. But then you have the same looking foam arf as everyone else at the field. And so it's like, I'd really like to make this my own. And plus, I really started the channel with the intention of helping folks in the hobby and showing what can be done in scale modeling, even with foam arfs that, are just come off the shelf, painted and whatnot. So, and that's really been my heart in behind it all, is to try and promote building, try and get folks to do something they wouldn't otherwise consider doing, and try to equip them in the ways that, will give them, help them to realize the vision they have for whatever the project may be, whether it's just a quick and dirty paint job or a full refinish on a foam arf or building a fiberglass kit or wood kit or whatever it is.
What is that word you're saying? Foam arf? What's that foam arf?
That's like the plug and play models.
Arf ARF is almost ready to fly.
Oh, okay, so that's like an acronym or something?
Yeah. Oh, yes. ARF is almost ready to fly. Yeah, it's an acronym.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we don't do acronyms here. That's one of the things I should have told you ahead of time. Only because I'm an idiot. And I don't do acronyms. I don't know what's going on. I have no idea what's going on.
Well, I worked in aerospace for over 20 years. There was nothing but acronyms.
Wow, you did. Wow, so you're an aerospace guy. So okay, so do you feel like because your parents had the hobby shop, you were exposed to it right from the get go, and did that led you to a career in aerospace?
Yeah, most definitely. So, like I said, I love airplanes. I love aviation. I always have. And so I grew up, I wanted to fly fighter jets in the military. That's what I was going to do. And there was no doubt in my mind that was what I was going to do until I got into junior high school and I had to get contact lenses. And so then I couldn't meet the eyesight requirement anymore. And so I couldn't fly fighter jets. And so at that moment, I decided, okay, well, if I can't fly them, then I'll design them instead. And so I went to school for aerospace engineering and became an aerospace engineer and worked on a lot of stuff through the course of the 23 plus years that I worked in aerospace. And yeah.
Derek and David.
Yeah.
I want to say something, and I don't want you guys to be offended.
No, I won't be.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, you guys are boring. I think I'm switching to RC planes.
That's the right decision.
I want to see a video of you flying your first one because I remember flying my first one and it was chaotic and it lasted about 10 seconds.
Then we got to go to the story of my buddy Bill, whose father was a test pilot for de Havilland, and we would sit around the campfire behind Bill's house, and his father would tell these unbelievable stories they both flew bush planes their whole life, but Bill is a commercial airline pilot for Air Canada, and he's I guess he's approaching the age of 60. But he's been flying. He said, his father said he thinks the first time he took the controls, he was about 6. And because they've always had bush planes, and Bill has his own bush plane. And he's taken me out a couple of times, and he insists that he can teach me to fly. And, he's flown into the local airport a couple of times because he has wheels on his floats. And, we take off and he flies around. He says, okay, now you do it. And I'm like, I can't do this. He says, well, yeah, all you do is work the pedals and turn. I'm like, no. Like the best I've done is I've steered the thing and I'm like, I am not doing the pedals. I said, we'll be corkscrewing into the ground in like 30 seconds. I'm not doing that. And, yeah, like I can't imagine me flying an RC plane either. Like it would last like, I just can't imagine. I would imagine flying RC planes, Chris, you got to have a fair amount of dexterity, don't you? Like when you're flying an RC plane, like, okay, David, it sounds like you have some experience doing it, but it looks to me like you've got to have some amount of dexterity or something, some sort of natural ability almost.
What I'll say is it's not as easy as people think it is. And even I know full-scale pilots who are great full-scale pilots and terrible RC pilots. And you're flying right from an external view. You don't have your butt in the seat. And so you don't have that feedback, right? Feeling what the airplane is doing. All you have is the observation of what it's doing. And so there's that aspect to it. Plus, certain vantage points, you can get confused on the sticks and stuff. Like when the airplane is pointing right at you, the natural tendency is to, it feels like the ailerons are reversed, even though they're not. And so, because when you look at it, you want to if it's turned a certain way, you want to turn it the opposite way, but that's actually going to make it worse, right? So when the airplane's coming straight at you, you want to turn into the low wing, which is anecdotes, for that. And so it does, just like full scale flying, though, it can be mastered by anyone. It just takes practice, but it takes perfect practice. And so I tell folks who are looking to get into the hobby, don't just go out there and loan shark it, because you're going to end up spending a bunch of money, crashing airplanes, and you're going to get discouraged. Find a local RC club, get connected, find somebody to help you. A lot of RC clubs actually have instructor pilots that will help folks who are just starting out, because you can't replace personal instruction, just the same as in full scale. That personal instruction, they teach you how to fly properly, train the right muscles in the right way, and all. It's really important.
So I had a really good question. Now I can't remember what it was.
I would also jump in and say, I remember back when I worked in a hobby shop when I was in college, but they still had the RC simulators where you had a kind of a USB plug-in that was like a radio control, and you can kind of practice in the off season on your own through your PC. I don't know if that's still something that they do, but
oh yes,
that's a good point.
Yeah,
I would try to use them and always crash it.
Yeah, and then you could just press a button and you get a brand new airplane after you crash it. So
yes,
well, and what I always say is, so that's the other part of it, and that I'm glad you mentioned, because they do have the RC simulators still, and they're really good now. And the thing is that I say is, like, if you crash in the simulator once, it will have paid for itself, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So what would it cost in today's world to buy a decent plane and the controller and all that? Like, what would it cost for somebody to buy a plane and the controller and go to their local RC club? And because I'm assuming when you go to your local RC club, you don't walk up and say, "Hey, I'd like to learn how to RC fly," and some guy turns his plane over to you and says, "Have at it." Although,
well, it depends. Some clubs have airplanes specifically for teaching folks. Others don't. It's like, you got to get an airplane, and I'll teach you through it. But the nice thing about the hobby now is that stuff, like, when I was growing up, it was, if you wanted it, you had to build it. Well, now for $200-$300, you can get a trainer aircraft with a battery and a charger and a radio system that you can just go out and fly and have good success with. You do tend to get what you pay for. And so, the radio systems that come with these ready to fly airplanes are good to get you started with that airplane, but they're not going to allow you to grow, I'll say, right? So it's not something you're going to use for other airplanes, but as long as you know that up front, there's nothing wrong with it at all. And
okay. So what would I have the perfect, for this, well, as these guys will tell you, I don't really know much about anything. But so, I know nothing about RC flying. So what would the difference be between this starter radio and, say, the radio you would use now? Like what does it have an AM radio that you can listen to some tunes on while you're flying? Or like what?
So it has to do with like channel count, being able to have multiple models on a single radio. It's just generally going to be better quality gimbals, better quality sticks, more switches for functions. Like if you start out with a trainer is going to be generally 4 channels, right? Aileron, elevator, rudder, and throttle. And so from there, if you expand into other airplanes like warbirds, let's say, then you have 6 channels: ailerons, elevator, rudder, throttle, flaps, retracts. And so you need to have at least a 6-channel radio in order to perform all of those functions. And then as you progress even further, you get into even more complex airplanes, or get into like giant scale. For example, I have a 10-channel radio that I use for all my basic stuff. And then I have a 20 channel radio that I use for all of my more complex scale projects. And so having all of those channels, you can set up individual channels for each aileron. So if you want to make sure that they match exactly where we want to use them, and as like deflect them up to crow them like spoilerons or something like that, like you can do any number of things, which is, obviously way beyond just the basic user is going to do. But that's all that it is, right? So the ready to fly models, the radios that come with them don't allow you to, generally speaking, don't allow you to add multiple models. And then there's nowhere to really tune any of the rates, like how the airplane feels. It's kind of set out of the box for you. And so down the road, as you progress, it's really important to understand what your desired feel is from the aircraft, how it flies, the response that works for you. Some guys like it more sensitive, some guys like it less sensitive, right? So you develop that as you're learning.
I guess to try to tie it to the model railroad world, those 4-channel radios would be sort of like the Bachmann DCC throttle that you get in a train set, to where you're very limited on what you can do. And then the 20-channel radio that he was talking about would be sort of like having your Digitrax DT6, where they're up to like 600 now, where you have multiple function buttons, and then you can adjust the CVs and stuff like that, and your decoders for your locomotives would be sort of the cross reference for that.
Yeah, it's amazing how much similarity there is between the two hobbies. Like, I think one of the cool things about model railroading is the models move. And obviously in RC flying, they don't just move on 2 sticks of rail, but they're literally 3-dimensional. They fly. And I guess I'm wondering, if I was approaching the hobby, I would be constantly worried I'm going to crash and destroy my model that I worked so hard on. So let me just buy one of these off-the-shelf things, so if I break it, I can replace it. So how do you square the encouraging people, just start building something? It'll be fine. It's fun.
Okay.
And that risk. Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead. I'm interrupting you. I apologize.
Well, I guess, how do you square, Chris, the encouragement to go out and build with also the management of risk that it might be a pile of sticks the first time you fly it?
And before you answer that question, I'm proud of myself that we've made it over 30 minutes into this podcast, because I got to tell you, Chris, one of the saddest videos I've ever watched. I love your videos. I love you know what I love about your videos is the honesty that you bring to them. I think that's that's one of the keys with your videos, is that you just seems like you're right there with you. You're going to tell everybody everything that happens, and you're not going to hold back. And, you crashed your T-28. You built your T-28, and then it flew into the ground like after about, 5 minutes in the air or less than that?
It wasn't even that. It was right after takeoff.
Yeah. And I mean, that video I watched, I hated that it happened for you. I absolutely hated it. But I loved the fact that from the start to the finish of the video, we got to see, you trying to get it going and all that stuff, and explaining this about what was, and then it crashed, and then you guys walked over and you picked up the pieces and everything like that. I just absolutely love that video. And I think that was the one that sold me on, man, I got to talk to this guy. I got to find out more about this guy, because I thought it was it was a horrible video, but it was a great video.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I've gotten a whole myriad of comments on that video, as you can imagine, but
yeah,
there's been a lot of positive comments. I've been really fortunate to build a really great community around the channel, but as that video has gone wider, there's been a lot of hate that's come onto it too, but it is what it is. But at the end of the day, when you're flying RC airplanes, you have to be willing to accept the risk that any flight, it could be a pile of sticks, as you said, right? And so, and that could happen on, as they say, there's a saying, every airplane has an expiration date. You don't know when that is.
Right.
Ooh, wow.
But
Wow, I love that.
Or the other one is there's two types of RC airplanes: those that have crashed and those that will crash.
or may your the same number of takeoffs be the same number of landings?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like how far will that T-28 all the way to the scene of the crash?
Yeah.
So as I guess as a supplement to Chris's or to Derek's question is, I guess I was just piggybacking on his question is, yeah, like you just kind of shake it off or shrug it off and go, okay, well, I've learned from that and move on, I guess, eh?
So that's one of the things I've really tried to focus on is positivity and picking up the pieces after stuff like that, because it's hard and it can be very discouraging. I was very discouraged after that T-28 crash, and I went through a period where I was just extremely burned out too, and it was all happening around that same time, and so it was just like, man, But the important thing is to find the joy in it, right? So what is it that makes you happy? And so I came back into the shop and I just took out the stuff that I could, sent back what I needed to send back for, inspection and repair and whatever. And I just put myself into another project that I knew was going to be kind of a quick win, an easy win, which was that T-33 project. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that really, after I made that and flew it really got me excited again. And so that's really what it is about. And so I've got, like my email list of folks and I try to send out a monthly newsletter. And I just try to be positive and encouraging through all of that, because the world is hard enough, and so this is supposed to be an escape and it's supposed to be fun, and sometimes it's not fun. And so how do we make it fun again? And so after those incidents, that's really what, like, because there was the B-58 before that, which was a whole other mess, but
that was painful to watch.
Yeah, and that was completely my fault. I had made a mistake on the speed controllers for the motors. That they were too small and they just got too hot in the flight and they just shut down. And so that was completely my fault, and it was completely avoidable. And I take full responsibility for that. And the reality is I take full responsibility for the T-28 too, right? I could have not flown. Could have done a number of different things that maybe would have turned out differently. Maybe it wouldn't have, but I don't, at the end of the day, right, I made the decision to fly it, whether the equipment failed or not. And so I will say that, having the channel and guys out there helping you to try and film and stuff, do tend to put a little more pressure on myself to try and respect their time and get it situated. And so had I not had that element, I probably would not have flown it that day and tried to come back, and I probably would have just bought a new receiver and replaced it altogether.
Right. It was something to do with the one receiver wasn't working properly, and you tried to get it in the right spot in the plane or something. And
yeah.
And what did
the receiver just wasn't working to full capacity was the issue ultimately.
So you get, like you're saying, like you have somebody, like you have a friend that comes out and videos you while you're doing all this. So you're trying to arrange with those guys because you're taking up their time as well. Is that's what you're saying? So you kind of went ahead and tried it because your buddies were out there helping you film it and all that stuff.
Yeah. And we had already been out the week before to try it. And that's when I broke the prop on it. And so, yeah, I mean, we had already tried the week before. We're out here again, and so
is this T-28? Is this like a plane that would come fairly well finished? And you like how finished was this T-28 when you bought it?
So the airframe was built. It was an ARF model, so almost ready to fly. And it came from a friend of mine. His name, the company is Legend Hobby. And he was, out of the box, the airplane comes covered and mostly finished. You have to do all the final assembly. So that's installing servos, installing the control surfaces, so gluing the hinges, that kind of stuff, connecting all of the push rods and getting it to the flyable state, installing the engine. And so it was still a good amount of work in spite of the airframe being prefabricated.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because it looked like there was a fair amount to do, and it's 1/6 scale I'm seeing here, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it looks like I'm looking at it. It says, does this sound right? It's like $975 for the plane.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
Okay, and how much would that because you have a better controller, you have a fancier controller, how much would the controller cost, if you don't mind me asking?
The radio that I had in that model retails for about $1,800, I think, or $1,600.
And of course, the radio is used for plane after plane after plane. It's not just a one-time purchase. It's you can use it for multiple planes, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't used to be that way, by the way.
Oh, really?
Back in the day. Oh, yeah. Before computer radios, it was one radio, one airplane. So we used to have stacks of transmitters that we would choose from.
And before that, I was going to say it was a control line where you kind of followed it with a stick and some cable and spun around in a circle.
So when was the big change?
It's still pretty popular these days.
When was the big change in the hobby? Like in model railroading, one of the big changes in model railroading was in the mid to late 90s. Was that they came up with something called digital command control, or DCC, and that was a huge change in the hobby. Where before that, to wire your layout was much more complicated, and then when they came out with digital command control, wiring your layout became simpler. It became much more. You could have 20 engines running on a layout at the same time, and that was a big change. So when was a big change in the hobby of RC flying?
Well, the big change really came with the prefabricated and pre-built airframes. I remember starting to see some of those coming online in like the late 80s, and they were the line, it was called Easy Built kits. And so it was these wood airframes that were covered in a silk screened foam, like maybe a couple millimeter thick foam. And they just had strip ailerons and all that stuff. But that was really where it started. And since then, it's just slowly evolved and become even more prefabricated. And so it was pre-built wood airframes, and then you started getting all composite, hollow molded stuff, and then foam started coming online, and now what you can get in a foam airframe is really incredible. Like the scale fidelity, the detail, and all that stuff for the price is pretty amazing.
So what would the T-28 have been built out of?
T-28 was a wood airframe.
Okay.
Yeah, for when you start talking about large airframes, anything over about 70 inches wingspan is going to be either wood or composite. Below that, it could be wood or foam. But generally speaking, the most sense it makes, like for the large airframes, you're not going to see much in the way of foam just because of the structural rigidity just isn't there in that really large format.
And that's a question I wanted to ask you too, is you watch a lot of these RC videos, and these planes some of these planes are massive. And you're kind of sitting here thinking to yourself, well, why don't you just buy a real plane if you're going to fly one of these giant RC planes? Like, why not just buy a plane and get it over with,
Wow. Because it's still cheaper and safer. Right? Like if you're not in the airplane, it's definitely safer. And if you're not paying hundreds of dollars an hour or more to fly it, because you'll spend, it's crazy money 20, 30 plus $1,000 in some cases for some of these RC models, all composite, beautifully scaled, turbine engines or radial engines, or in some cases you'll get inline multi-cylinder engines, like really incredible stuff. And, it's the thing about it is, and like for me, as a guy who desperately wanted to be able to fly F-16s or F-14s or whatever, well, this gives me a chance to experience that. Yeah, it's in miniature, but the reality is that these models do exhibit many of the same characteristics and traits as their full-scale counterparts. And you do experience that, and every model flies uniquely differently. And it's just the nature of it. And yeah.
What's your favorite plane to fly?
Oh boy. It usually depends on what was most recently finished, but I've got a big A1 Skyraider that is probably my favorite warbird to fly. And yeah, I've got an A7 Corsair 2 that I've had for, I don't know, almost 20 years that I still enjoy having and flying when I get a chance to fly it.
How many right now, off the top of your head, how many flyable planes do you have, like right now?
Oh boy.
Roughly.
Not as many as you might think, but I recently started a new job, and so I have a whole lot more flyable airplanes than I normally do. But
okay, now wait a minute. Now you recently started a new job, and now you have a whole bunch more flyable airplanes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a story there that we can get into, but I'm looking at probably, I don't know, 8 to 12 flyable airplanes in my garage at the moment.
And it looks like I just was seeing here on this the T20. I'm sorry, I keep coming back to the T28 crash video, but it says grab a copy of my new painting and finishing book. You've got a book?
I do. I've published 3 books actually.
Do you?
And
okay.
It's all about.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah. Yes.
Do you sleep?
I do. So part of that was, the books, you can get them at let me try that again, www.artofscalemodeling.com. And it's all about painting and finishing. I talk about, the finishing methods, preparation for paint, whether it's, fiberglass model, foam model, wood model, whatever it is, it applies to all of that. And there's actually 3 books total that I've published. And so the main one is all about painting and finishing, weathering, detailing, all that stuff. I published a supplemental paint color guide. And so I packaged those 2 together. And so it goes through and looks at aircraft colors from, pre World War I all the way through to the modern day. And so I outline what the federal standard colors are, and paint color is a really big one for me. Like, a scale model just doesn't look right if it's not the right colors. And so I'm really particular about that stuff. And so I published that book. And then I also have a 3rd book about cockpit detailing and painting and using 3D printing and other methods to accomplish that stuff.
I was going to say, your book on the federal standard, that's on my to-buy list this week after I came across that.
So cool. It's the word art of scalemodeling.com.
Correct.
And is that a great website domain name? That is fantastic.
Yeah. And is that a website that you have, or is that strictly for the books?
That is strictly for the book. And so my main website otherwise is thercgeek.com. You do have to have the THE at the beginning. Otherwise you won't end up in the right place.
Chris, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Will you come back on in a while? Because there's like way too much stuff to talk to you about.
Of course. Yeah.
Good. Oh, man, I just brought up the website. Very cool.
Yeah. It's a great website. I I'm kind of over here stunned and silent. Like I just there is so much cool wisdom that I've gotten to apply to my own hobby through this conversation. Like, the important thing is to find the joy in it, what makes you happy, and you have to find the desired feel of your airplane. Like, there's just so much that translates, and it's been really an impactful discussion.
Oh yeah, it's been a great discussion, and I keep coming back to the same thing, but I mean, I really felt like the T-28 video that's what sold me. Like when I saw the guys walking over to pick up the pieces, and how disappointed Chris was, and I kept thinking to myself, buddy, turn the camera off. You're killing this guy.
That's enough.
Yeah.
Anybody who's been in the hobby has been there, and as they say, if you ain't crashed, you ain't flown. And so, it's important to just show the highs and the lows in a real way. That's what I've always kind of been about. And, try and show how to overcome obstacles, because it's, that doesn't just apply in the hobby, it applies in life too. Right.
Right.
So,
exactly. That's I think the great thing about hobbies is it really makes you a better, well-rounded person. A couple of things on the other. So I see you have a blog on your website.
Oh no.
It's a bit out of date, but yes.
Yeah. I hate blogs. I hate blogs
for SEO,
Yeah, I hate blogs because it seems like everybody that has a blog, very few people have blogs that they can keep up to date, because it's like, look at yourself. You got the video channel, you're writing books, you got a blog, you got your website, you got to keep all this stuff up to date. It's like, seriously, what do you sleep like 2 hours a night or something?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's a lot, and the blog is what has kind of taken the back seat.
Yeah, I don't blame.
It's just really hard to find the time to write, even with help from AI. I still don't have the time to put it all together and all the website stuff. And
blogs are. This is. Don't take this the wrong way. This is not about your blog. This is about blogs in general. I see blogs as a pimple on the butt of society.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm glad I could add another pimple to the butt of society. Maybe I can put a little cream on it.
Yeah. And I'm sure I'll get some hate mail for that. So you said people were giving you a hard time for your crash video? Like, were people writing comments that weren't very nice or something?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of paper tigers out there, guys that'll say stuff hiding behind a keyboard that they'd never say to you in person. But the other part of it is that the guys in the RC industry are very tribal about their radio systems. And so it's like, oh, if you're not using Futaba, then it's junk. Or if you're not using Jetty, or if you're not using Spectrum, or whatever it is, they're like, oh, then it's junk. It's like, well, no, that's not true. And so, there's been a lot of like, oh, you should have been using this radio system or this one. I was like, okay, guys, I'm going to use what I bought. Thanks. But, and so I've actually kind of had to just not really pay attention to a lot of the comments that have come in, the last, however long it's been.
That is a constant, I bet you, in every single hobby, is the keyboard warriors who have no problem spewing vitriol hate towards others that are doing. And a friend of mine owns a model railroad manufacturing company, and I mean, he's talked to me about one rivet's in the wrong place, and he'll get a series of hate messages saying you didn't build this particular boxcar correctly because two of the rivets are in real life, they're an inch and a quarter, and you've made them an inch, and it's kind of like, it's like you say, keyboard warriors that have the ability to, make comments, and it can be very disheartening, and you almost have to look away.
Yeah, you have to filter through it. And what I will say about it is this is something that I read recently, and it's hurt people, right? And so we don't know what folks are going through on the other side of the computer, and so they may be going through a whole lot and lashing out as a result, right? And so, you just have to filter through it and take it for what it is and have thick skin about it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Otherwise, you got to stop. You either have to have a thick skin or you have to stop. Those are your two choices.
Yeah.
Okay. So I got a bunch more questions. Oh, so just to wrap up. So now if I contact Tom Cruise and just mention your dad's name, is that going to help me at all?
Probably not.
Oh. Okay.
You could try, though, and let me know.
Yeah. And I bet you Tyler Perry has watched your videos.
I don't know. I wonder.
So I don't know if you guys know, but I stumbled across a video. Tyler Perry has like a runway and the whole this huge hangar outside.
Yeah, he's big into RC.
He's huge, and he's got these gigantic planes that cost this $10,000 and $15,000 and $20,000. What's the biggest plane?
Cost more than that.
What's the biggest plane you've flown?
The biggest is many years ago, I test flew a turbine-powered Hawker Hunter for a friend of mine. That was probably about the largest. I think it was about a 1/6 or 1/5 scale. But otherwise, the largest airplanes that I have in my hangar currently are the A1 Sky Raiders.
Okay, so and last question, just we used to the podcast used to be longer, but then through a series of events, now they're shorter. Now we try to stop in an hour, which actually I like because they're easier to edit. Because you must find that editing your videos takes up quite a bit of time. So I like the keeping them in an hour and 10 minutes or 55 minutes seems to be a fun amount of time. So you have a new job where you're going to be able to fly lots of other planes?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I worked in aerospace for 23 years, I think it was. And then it's about almost 3 years ago, it'll be 3 years in July, we moved out of California to Tennessee and that put us in a, much more favorable position monetarily. And so I tried to see what I could do with the RC Geek full time over that time. And sometime after the T-28 crash, I had a company reach out called Motion RC, which is one of the big manufacturers, retailers online for RC jets and warbirds and airplanes and stuff. And they offered me a position as the category manager for their RC aircraft and RC helicopters. Nice. And it sounded way too fun to pass up. So I now work for Motion RC full time and do all the RC Geek in my spare time again. And so, yeah, it's been a really fun and welcome change. It's been a good time.
So yeah, they have everything. They have microplanes and backyard construction and airbrush stuff and RC airplanes and RC construction equipment. That's something I want to get, guys. Is somebody's got to help me figure out how I can sneak into my house one of these RC construction equipment.
Wait, I've been wanting an RC excavator for years.
I know.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only funny if I can figure out how to get the $6,000.
But the shipping is free over $99, Lionel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll buy two of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, a bunch of them are out of stock. I guess they can't get them or something. They got all the product. Like they get a front end loader that would be lots of fun to have.
It does take time for that stuff, and given the price point of certain things, we may not stock them by the huge numbers either, right?
Right.
And so, because there's limited sellability, I would say, but it'll come back. If it's something you're seriously interested in, you put your email in there for the notification.
Oh, okay.
And you'll get an email when it comes back in stock.
Could you imagine using the front end loader to distribute out cheese balls?
Gone full circle.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say, just real quickly about the position. The cool thing about it is that I'm able to utilize all of the aerodynamic knowledge that I've gained in the aerospace industry, and all of the practical application I've got through RC, and now apply it to the RC industry and influence it in a much more different way than I have in the past. And so that's pretty exciting for me.
Yeah, we gotta get you back on the podcast if you don't mind in like 3 or 4 months and just continue on the conversation, because what do you think, guys? I think our first venture into something other than model railroading has been a roaring success.
I mean, the first time we get, mention of Tom Cruise and, relation.
Yeah. Like after I get on.
There's also, don't forget Clint Eastwood and Firefox.
Oh, yeah.
There's a connection there?
Yeah, my dad worked on Firefox too.
Oh, okay. Well, Clint's getting.
Are you not familiar with that movie?
No, I know I'm familiar with the movie. I'm just kind of like, I don't know which celebrity to contact first.
Well, why don't we get them both on?
Yeah.
Well, we'll get them both on the podcast.
You might want to, go with Clint Eastwood first, because he's not getting any younger.
I have a friend of mine, Marcus Newbacher. He has a nephew, Rocket Rogers is his nickname, Benjamin Rogers, who is a budding race car driver who's very, very good. He's just a natural. And through a series of events, I'm gonna end up winning the Daytona 500 when I'm like 79 or 80. And it's just going to be a real feel good story, a real heart warmer. A 79-year-old man wins Daytona 500 on last lap pass and stuff. But it's like, like Clint Eastwood's pretty old, but Tom Cruise is young. So I think, and Tom Cruise had that movie about stock car racing. So
Days of Thunder.
Days of Thunder, yeah.
This is all starting to come together.
It's Top Gun for NASCAR.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, do you want to be best friends?
I am currently in the market, so sure.
Okay.
Lionel gets a new man crush.
Yeah. All right, we better stop because Chris says we can talk to him again. We'll stop now, and we'll. Okay, so now you get to hear the end of the show. So, Derek, can you give out our email address?
Yes, I'd be honored to. Okay, if you would like to email us and tell us how much you loved Chris's episode here on the podcast, you can reach us at modelerslife@gmail.com. Again, that's modeler with one L, like Royal Aircraft, not two L's, like the art of scale modeling.
Wow, nice. Mm. So let's give out those two URLs again. That's the RC Geek is the main page, and there is a blog there, but up to you whether you look at it or not. And then there's the art. Another one is the Art of Model Railroading, where you can catch Chris's books.
No, it's the Art of Scale Modeling.
The Art of Scale Modeling. That's right. There you go. The Art of Scale Modeling. I'll put. I'll put both of those on.
So just to be clear, there's no the at the beginning. Okay. It's just artofscalemodeling.com. And there's only one L, not two.
There you go. With the email address, it's modelerslife@gmail.com. But the website is amodelerslife.com. So there you go. So that's a long story, but that's what it is. And so if you enjoyed this particular podcast, you can also, we have a Patreon channel. So on Monday, where this podcast is, this is on a Monday. This is free. The world will hear this, and I'll send you a link, and you can put it on your website if you want. And so this particular podcast is free. The next one, we might put you on Patreon because it'll be cool too. But this is free, and if you go to our website, amodelerslife.com, and you click on the Patreon site, you can have twice as much podcasting a week. You get the free one on Monday and the paid one on Tuesday. And if you go over there, Chris, it's $5 a month. But if you move up to the $10 level, it's you can enter the exciting new game, Hey Dude, Where's My Shirt? So at the $10 level, everybody gets a shirt, a T-shirt once a year that's only available to Patreon members. But the problem is the guy that's in charge of sending out the shirts, he's useless. He's old, he's slow, he's nice guy, but not that swift. And he's also me. So the shirts do go out. You're going to get your shirt. There's some people have them, some people don't. It's just but the beauty of it is now you're entered into the game show that's sweeping the globe. Hey, dude, where's my shirt? Let's see, what else do we have to say? I think that's pretty much it, isn't it? We covered the podcast. We covered the email address and the Patreon channel, and we're going to we're working on restarting up our T-shirt, our merchandise store with the help of one young Derek, who's helping me do that, and we're going to get that going again. And I think that's it. I think we got her covered. This is a good podcast. Holy mackerel.
Great podcast.
Great podcast. Great, tons of information. And now all I got to do is figure out how to sneak this $1,200 front end loader into my house. Hey, you know what I just thought? If you do join the Patreon channel, it's an opportunity to help Lionel get a 1/6 scale front end loader that he can be playing with. 1/16 scale.
That's going to hurt the T-shirt chances, though.
Yeah, that'll just lead to a whole bigger mess with the T-shirts.
I just picture you sitting on Daytona Beach with your feet up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Digging holes in the sand.
Exactly.
Yeah, just like dig holes in your front yard, just move dirt from one place to the next, and
yeah. Well,
and then you just look at your wife and say, "I think we got gophers."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and there's always my Florida home is in one of those HOA things, and it has to be you have to maintain the appearance. And so I'm always, every year I got to buy some more stones for the front lawn and garden. So I'll move them now. I'll just dump the whole bag on the driveway and move them with the front end loader. It'll take me 2 weeks, but who cares? Okay, so Chris,
sounds like a win-win.
Yeah, it sounds like a win-win to me too. Okay, Chris. So now what we need you to do at the appropriate moment, we need you to say "Happy Rails" to you. Now the key to this is there's no singing, there's no dancing, there's no interpretation of any kind. Just we need you to say enthusiastically with an enthusiastic voice. We need you to say "Happy Rails" to you. Do you think you can handle that?
Okay.
Okay,
I'll do my best.
Okay, you'll know when it is. Well, Chris, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say...
Wait, what was it again?
No, that's not it. No.
Happy Rails to you, is that it?
I said no interpretation. Yeah, happy rails to you.
Okay, sorry, okay. I blanked out for a minute.
Okay, we'll try again. You're not starting those gas engines inside your shop without ventilation.
No, but I've got paint fumes and all kinds of stuff, so I'm high as a kite.
Sipping on the nitro.
Yeah. All right. Well, Chris, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40. No, wait a minute. Now
no.
Wait.
Oh, no.
No, it's contagious.
Yeah. Okay. One more time. This is it. Third time's lucky.
We're going to get it this time.
If Tom Cruise hears this, we're done for.
Now he's never going to come on our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Even when I throw out Chris's dad's name, it's like, he's going to say, "Hi, yeah, I heard that. You heard you guys screw that." Well, Chris, as the sun slowly sets on another episode of A Modeler's Life, Well, Chris, as we close the barn doors and the sun slowly sets on another episode of No, I got to go find it. Now I can't even remember what it is. Well,
it's my fault.
This is why we always do a read-through.
Can we fix it in post?
Oh, yeah. This will all be edited out. Don't worry.
This is all in the script. Don't worry, guys.
Okay. Well, Chris, as the sun slowly sets on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and we Well, Chris, what is it? Anybody remember what it is? Is it close? When do we close the barn doors? Is it before the sun sets? Well, Chris, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say,
"Happy Rails to you."
While in Busted Knuckle, guests of a Modeler's Life podcast stay at the Casa del Sol Motor Court and Inn, where late-night dancing at the Rumba Room is a magical event to be experienced.
It's another Lincoln Homer.
No, I wanted you to do it enthusiastically.
Okay, let's do it all over again.
Okay.